Thank you very much, Mr. President. You know, we've been debating, asking questions of the author of the bill, and Chairman Creighton, you've chaired this committee, the Education Committee, for how many years now?
2 sessions combined, higher ed and lower ed, and a session before higher ed.
About 6 years?
Yes.
So obviously, I don't need to, I mean, you're aware the Texas Bill of Rights equivocally states that equality under the law should not be denied or abridged because of sex, race, color, or creed, or national origin. Article 1, Section 3A. You're aware of that in our Constitution.
The Texas Constitution,
Yeah,
correct.
yes.
Yes.
Similarly, Section 1.002 of the Texas Education Code states that equal educational services or opportunities, an educational institution undertaking to provide education services or activities to any individual within the jurisdiction or geographical boundaries of that institution shall provide equal opportunities to all individuals within its jurisdiction, geographic boundaries pursuant to this code. And in B, it says, an education institution may not deny services to any individual to participate in the school district's special education program as provided by Section 29.003. And it says there, but the educational institution shall provide individuals with disabilities special education services authorized by law or expressly authorized to assist and contribute towards the provision of an appropriate special education services. The reason I bring it up is I'm sure you're aware of those protections when you were drafting your bill, correct?
Correct.
So my understanding, though, under your bill, that if a family who has a special needs or has a special education student receives an ESA and they present it to a private school, that school does not have to accept that student. Is that correct?
That's correct. There can be rejection.
They can deny that student, even though a public institution could not deny that student. The private school could deny admission to a student for any reason, right? Any reason they choose. And so that's one of the concerns that I have, is that whether it's be their religious practices, their identity, disability status, they're not required to provide language access services to emergent bilingual students. So it's true that a private school can deny admission on the basis of sex, gender orientation, gender identity, a multiple, often intersecting ways that these tax dollars that you mentioned came from the surplus. But the surplus, they're still Texans' tax dollars. They just happen to be above and beyond what we normally have. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
So you're telling us that this bill would allow hardworking Texans' tax-paying dollars the ability to be presented to an institution, a private institution, that could deny that student, where the Texas Constitution requires equal educational opportunities. It has a mandate for us to do that. And so I don't understand how you reconcile the two.
Well, private school admissions is as it has been before this bill was considered, right? Just as with Texas grants, we have tax money going to public school students going to a private school university setting, and they have their own requirements at TCU and at Baylor and others that we've all supported those grants and the use of those funds. But no school, public or private, can discriminate on the basis of race. According to Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, no private school can discriminate on the basis of race, color, or national origin.
You mentioned earlier the no strings attached for the private schools. My concern happens to be with these families with kids with disabilities. Isn't it true that in similar previous versions of this bill, parents with students with disabilities, if they move from a public school to a private school, they waive their rights to their protections from IDEA and free and appropriate education, accountability, and dispute resolution for those services?
Under IDEA, under the federal IDEA EA, there's two primary rights. There's evaluation, which is a right extended to all school-age children, not just those in public schools, right? And there's free and appropriate education, requires a process to identify the services that an ISD can and will provide in negotiation with parents. We also know that 87% of private schools serve special needs, and there are 50 main schools around the state that are nationally known for serving all special needs. So, of course, if a student with a particular disability, like let's say a need-based tied to autism, is accepted, but a student with another severe challenge and disability is rejected because that school either doesn't serve that type of special need, or maybe they don't have seats or capacity. That is seen as a difference between rejection and bias and discrimination, or worse.
Correct. Why is there any reason that 504 students are not included under the definition of disability? Because that leaves out children with dyslexia and other health issues that could require additional flexibility and or accommodations.
Senator Menendez, you have championed opportunities for students with special needs and disabilities and challenges, including 504, as long as I've known you in the House and in the Senate. 504, I know you've worked on through other bills, not just dyslexia, but other components of 504, but there are migraines included in that, there are peanut allergies included in that, there are just differences within that 504 and those challenges that are not quite through that threshold that you would, and maybe many of us would like to see.
I agree that we need to tread carefully, because I think that where public schools are required to complete special education evaluations for their students who request them, we've already seen an increase in these evaluations, the request over the years. So considering this program aims to provide even more money for students with disabilities, and it prioritizes them in the lottery that you've set forth, I'm concerned about the potential uptick in evaluations being requested of the public schools simply so that they can leave and take this ESA. So I want to ask you a question. Are you open to ensuring that public schools have the necessary funding for these evaluations? Because as you said in your layout, that this is about the children that are in the schools. So if you want to give everyone this opportunity, especially where you have set aside 80% for people with special needs or people who are at 500% of the federal poverty line or below. So that is the concern that I have, that they're going to get $11,500 if they have a disability, so $1,500 more than a student that does not have a disability. Would you be open to ensuring our public schools have the funding for the evaluations over the next few years?
Well, I'll be supporting significant funding initiatives, as I mentioned in our exchange with Senator Colcourse. I know Senator Betancourt is championing a bill for special education and has significant funding together with that. Last session, I led an effort on the Senate floor to uncouple the basic allotment so that school districts would have incredible flexibility in their diverse needs to be able to apply those dollars in different ways. That was rejected. So even though it passed the Senate floor, the House turned down that opportunity. And with that uncoupling of the basic allotment, we created a new teacher allotment, teacher pay allotment for compensation as a permanent budget culture in our budget, and that was also rejected in the House. Net of it is, yes, I'm committed. It won't be through this legislation for creating an ESA program, but with the different bills and the budget that I mentioned, I'll be working with you on those solutions.
Appreciate that very much. On page 9 of your bill, on lines 51, it states, number 1, states that that a private school is not subject to federal and state laws regarding the provision of educational services to a child with a disability in the same manner as a public school. What does that mean?
Well, just as I mentioned, if there's like the Thrive School in Magnolia, Texas, that is statewide known for assisting students with autism, right? They may not either have the capacity to take more students, or they may not have the ability to serve another student with a severe disability or challenge in that category or another category. So that rejection is possible. A public school would need to accept that particular student, and the significant and tremendous difference in the public education budgets that we bring forward are to apply federal, state, and local dollars towards the needs of that child. Private schools do not have that kind of help, even with the fractional dollars we're putting into an opportunity that they might have a fighting chance to get a better education there.
Yeah, that whole section is the special education notice, where the Certified Education Assistance Organization needs to post on their website so that people know that the private school is not subject to the same laws as a public school. So I see where the differentiator is there. I'm going to close with this.
And thank you for mentioning the notifications in the bill.
Right.
The bill requires those specific notices to be on the master website for the ESA plan of the differences in the service that's available between a public and a private. So again, as you and I would share together, we want these families to be informed. We want them to understand that there's options out there, but are they exactly the fit that they're looking for? And is it a better opportunity or path? And many of them will say, no, I'm staying right here in my public school because I love it.
So my last question for the opening here, we'll get some amendments we're going to talk about. How did you come up with, when you said that you set aside 80% of the programs weighted for special needs, and then you go on to say low income, and you say special needs and low income. You've said, you referred to low income several times, but you define low income in your bill as 500% of the federal poverty level. So in the state of Texas, that would be over $160,000 for a family of four. Is there any other program in the state where we define low income as 500%?
Well,
because I know free and reduced lunch is at reduced is at 185 and free is at 130, I believe.
Correct. And to clarify, it's up to that amount, right? So any threshold at the poverty level and up to that amount, which is the cutoff of a teacher and a firefighter, which we had testimony in our committee where a teacher and a firefighter as a couple and their children, the firefighter died. He passed away in a firefighting situation, and the widow, the mother, sold everything to be able to keep her kids in a San Antonio private school because they were thriving. That would have included them in the top end of that 80% category, along with all other income thresholds. So I don't think we want to remove the middle class from an opportunity to be able to have a fighting chance, but what we see across the nation is the 100th percentile, 200th, 300th are by far and above those that are served through as ESA recipients in a weighted priority set like we have.
My concern is that when the bar is so high that it doesn't really weight it, because in your prior iterations of this bill, you had other ratios at a lower level that prioritize those people, and then you didn't have the sort of the upper level free-for-all until a higher level. So if you don't prioritize, then it's almost in name only. It doesn't really prioritize the very poor or the people.
Depending on who applies, right? It depends on who actually approaches and submits an application.
True.
But we know that our commitment is nothing beyond appropriating dollars to any income level but those and below. And I believe that it's going to be very impressive on that. Now, that other framework that you mentioned from 2023, that was rejected by many members on this floor that voted against the bill. So we took that as a signal that that was not a good framework. We still sent it to the House, and the House rejected that framework, and possibly it was too confusing. So we leaned it up. We made sure that all income thresholds at low income are covered, and then that is the priority set for 80% of the legislation.
I appreciate the explanation. I don't believe that the rationale for who was eligible was the reason why many of us voted against it, but I appreciate your time and your questions.
Thank you, Senator
Thank you, Mr.
Menendez.
President.